I'm Meg. I'm an alcoholic.
Meg.
My sobriety date. My sobriety date. I forgot that's where we're at. It's been a minute. My sobriety date is August 10th of 2007. My home group is the Early Friendship Group that meets Saturday mornings at 8:30 in Friendship Manor. And my sponsor is Shelly B. That's crazy to hear the young people's chant. I recently just got back from the International Women's Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous that was held in Palm Springs, California 2 weekends ago. That's my second year that I've been able to go. I've also, as Brian said, I was on the SaLTYPAA bid committee when we were when I was first sober about 5.5, 6 years ago. We bid and we went up to Boise, Idaho, and that was the first young people's conference that I had ever attended, and it changed a lot for me. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am from Utah. I was born here to an alcoholic mother her mother had killed herself when she was 15, when my mother was 15, so she raised 6 brothers and sisters. From the age of 15 on, she drank to forget that. My dad is from a secret alcoholic family. They were LDS, and my grandparents and aunts and uncles all secretly drank. And that being said, as I grew up in that household, there were many times that I put my mother to bed, that I found cocaine in the house. I took care of my younger sister. My sister's 3 years younger than me. And I basically raised her from when we were young as well. We were latchkey kids. I have children of my own. And when I hear people talk about, what age do you let your kid be home alone? It's almost funny to me because I was home alone at the age of 5. I took care of my sister from that point. I literally had the key that was around my neck. I got us ready in the morning. I got us on the bus, got us to school. I found her again after school, got back on the bus, and got home. And that's how it was. That's how life was for me. My mom worked nonstop, and so that meant that she drank because she was stressed out. So you would know what kind of evening it would be based on the alcohol that my mother was drinking. She would drink really, really, really shitty, like, red box wine, and that meant it was a crying night, and that meant that we were going to have to hear about all the woes of her ways. Or if it was tequila or whiskey, that meant we were going to fight. I look back on that, and I hear some people say, I had a bad childhood, so that's why I drank. I don't believe that that's why I started drinking at the age of 12. I think that it was ingrained in me to do that even before the environment that I lived in. It was just readily available to me. The first drink I had was when I was 12. It was after a 6th grade end of year party, and my parents were the parents that were never home. I didn't have a parent that was a stay-home parent. So we went to my house, and that was the first time that I ever drank vodka. And I explained the way that it made me feel is none of the other girls were drinking it because I always had to be the badass. From an early age, I always had to be the one that was hanging out with the guys, proving how bad I was by, how much more I could drink, everything else. So we decided to drink my mother's vodka, and a couple of the guys drank it, and they thought it was so repulsive, they couldn't even stand the taste of it. And I drank it, and I explained it how I explain it now how I've heard someone else in the rooms explain their first try of alcohol. It's like every jagged edge you've ever had is wrapped in velvet and silk. It was like all of a sudden everything it was just like, whoa, and that was at 12. I continued to sneak drinks when I was young like that, and I fell in with a crowd that would also drink and use drugs. Drugs are a part of my story. The first real alcoholic blackout that I ever had, and I tell this story not for shock, so I want you to know that. I tell this because there's other men and women in the program that have had similar situations, and it's important that we relate that. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I have nothing in common with this woman, maybe you do. When I was 14, a few girls and we were 14, all of us were 14. We went and hung out with some older guys. They were 18 years old. And they took us to a man's house that was 32. And we went to his house, and that was the first time I ever was introduced to Jägermeister. And I remember sitting in this man's kitchen. I thought it was so cool to hang out with this biker guy, and he had these Dobermans and stuff like that. And I was like, this is so awesome. Not like, whoa, this is weird, like 32-year-old dudes hanging out with these young kids, red flag. No, it was like, this is cool and dangerous, and that's what I lived for. And early on in the night, the boys, the 18-year-old boys were talking about sexual experiences, and they said, said, well, who here is a virgin? And I was the only one that raised my hand that night, and I had a little bit of the Jaeger, so I was feeling a little bit tipsy, so I probably wouldn't have advertised that easily, but I did. They all laughed, and someone apparently had said, well, we'll see by the end of the night if that's still the case. And I can tell you that night I drank so much Jägermeister that I woke up the next morning and I was covered in blood and vomit. I had been raped, and I had no idea what had happened. I pulled myself up, kind of gathered my stuff together, went into the bathroom, and I had vomit in my hair. And I remember looking at myself and thinking, you can do one of two things. You can go out there and, cry, figure out what's going on. Or you can rinse this vomit out of your hair, pull your hair back, and walk out like nothing has happened. And that's what I did. And that pretty much explains how everything happened for the rest of my teens. I continued to drink. I stayed away from men, except for in violent situations. I fell into a group of people, friends with a group of people that were extremely violent, would look for any opportunities to be violent with other people, and I thrived on that. I was the girl that always showed up with the scariest guys, and you knew that shit was going to happen if we showed up. I hid my drinking for a long time from the people that I was friends with because they were of a crowd that didn't do that. They were very staunch against that, and I just wanted to belong with them, so I just kept it a secret. I did do some things right. I managed to go to school every day, even though every day ended up in some sort of fist fight with somebody else at school. I did graduate, and I did have straight A's. So amongst all of that insanity, it was really important for me to keep up some sort of face, to have some sort of, front look normal. I moved to New York City when I was 18, and, thought that would, it was the girl getting out of Utah. I was going to go to New York, and I was going to be a badass and be a hardcore punk rock girl, live with all these guys, and I was scared shitless. I remember getting there and being pissed off that nobody said please and thank you. Like here, I was like, no one says excuse me. No one says thank you, and I just remember it was I thought I was so, diverse and so this worldly young girl. And, it was so funny that those tiny comforts of home were shown to me when I got there. I ended up moving home from there. When I came home from New York is when I found very hard drugs. That was back when, raves started getting big in Utah and stuff, and I fell in with that crowd. I thought that if I moved away, I could get away from the drugs and the alcohol again. I thought, and my mom was on this crazy alcoholic relapse because she would try to get sober, and then she would get fucking crazy, and I remember just the insanity of it, just thinking I got to get out of here. So I had this brilliant idea that I would move to Seattle to get sober, of all the fucking places, right? And so I moved to Seattle with a job because I've been employable my whole life. I've worked in corporate America, believe it or not, most of my life. I've held a job since I was 15. Even when I moved away in New York, I always had a job. So I moved to Seattle. I was relocated with a company to a place called Linwood, Washington. And I moved there in hopes that I would, because I was only 19. And I was like, I'm 19, I can't buy alcohol, I don't know anyone, I'm not gonna be able to buy drugs, like, this is perfect. Well, if anyone's ever been to Seattle, there's this lovely area called Capitol Hill, and the first night I went out, I was going exploring at 4 in the morning, which is like, God, if my daughter went out 19 exploring at 4 in the morning in Capitol Hill in Seattle, I'd freak out. But, I went exploring, and I walked by these two men, and they said to me, they turn to you and they say, Coke, meth, like they just said that. And then I was like, game on, you know what I mean? So it was just like, followed them, and then that was it. That didn't last very long. I did end up moving home from Seattle about a year later, and that's when I found cocaine. And I know in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't, a lot of the old timers will hear you, we don't talk about drugs. I think it's important, especially to young people today, to talk about drugs. Because although I am a true alcoholic, drugs are part of my story. And when I took cocaine, I remember thinking, holy shit, I can drink all night on this shit. Like, I'll sober up. Like, I love that I'll sober up mentality, right? Like, and it was just like, straight on from there. I ended up having a daughter. I didn't find out I was pregnant until I was 3 months along. I remember because I had tried to get off of drugs and alcohol for a little while, and I had started, I was really tired. So I was always tired, and I just couldn't figure out why I wanted to sleep all the time. I figured it was just because, I was only doing drugs once a week, and I was only drinking 3 or 4 times a week, so it must be that, my body's just needing some rest. Well, it was one day that I looked in the mirror and I saw that my belly had started forming. And so I went to the doctor and found out that I was 15 weeks pregnant. I was instantly ashamed, and I told them everything. I told them everything I had ever done while pregnant, because I was so scared that I had damaged this baby. By the grace of God, my daughter was born in February of 2011 with no health problems. I'm very, very lucky for that. And, tomorrow she'll be 14 years old. And I'm very blessed that, I had the opportunity to get my shit together for a few months and have that baby. It took 2 weeks for me to start drinking again. I started drinking, I started using drugs heavily, and that pretty much sums up the majority of my 20s. I could tell you a bazillion stories about getting drunk. I'm known for drinking whiskey. My nickname's Whiskey Meg. If I showed up at the bar, it was like, people were like, we need to fucking leave, because something was about to happen of some sort, and it was either that I was gonna, steal your shit, punch you, make out with your boyfriend, take your boyfriend home, you know what I mean? Like, it was just never good. In 2007, I was laid off of my job of 7 years, and they gave me a full severance package. So I suddenly had all day to do nothing, but the same pay rate that I had for, the last couple of years. So, and that was in March of 2007. The next 6 months were pretty dark for me. And it wasn't until on August 8th of 2010, I went out for one beer. And I share this story because when I heard, somebody read, in the big book about those things that we did, how we tried to go to the gym, and you tried to just drink wine, or you just try to drink beer, you only drink when you're on business, or you don't drink when you're on business. Like, I tried it all. I tried to go to the gym thinking that was gonna, solve my problems. I tried to do yoga thinking, I was like, I fucking hated hippies. And I was like, I'm gonna go do yoga because this is gonna help me like get in touch with nature and help me not drink crazy alcohol. And, so the last bit was I started riding my bike to and from the bar thinking that would help me, because I was like, you know, you won't want to drink that much because you're gonna have to ride your bike home, you know. But then it was like, well, then I can drink more because I am riding my bike home, because I'll actually be burning off that alcohol. While, you know, it's just the crazy things that we think. So I rode my bike to the bar, and I went for one beer. It was August, you know. I was like, I just want a Hefeweizen. That's just what I want, like one Hefeweizen. I can tell you that I had that beer. And I can't tell you what happened after that. I know I was kicked out of 2 bars. I was asked to leave the initial establishment. I was kicked out of 2 bars, one where I was screaming venomously the "See you next Tuesday" name at the bar owner, saying because she wouldn't sell me drugs, you know. But then I was so appalled that they wanted me to leave the bar. And, you know, I share this because it's important, you know. And so I had one gentleman, one of the many bottom feeders I spent time with, pick me up and take me home. We went and bought an 8-ball, and after I convinced him it was all gone, had him leave, invited over another gentleman caller, got him to take me to get more drugs, and finally kicked him out. And I came to after a blackout at 9 in the morning, and I was playing solitaire by myself and drinking mouthwash to come off of the cocaine. And at some point in that morning, I thought, this isn't normal. You know, like, this is something's a little off here. I remember, you know, that morning and other mornings, I used to hate. And if you're like me, you stayed up all night, and you would hate the hour between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. The 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. hour was the worst, because it's when it got darkest, and then suddenly that light started creeping in, and you couldn't close the blinds tight enough to keep it out, and that's when the joggers start, and the dog walkers start, and those fucking birds, like, it was just like, that was the sign that I had stayed up again, you know. And that was the sign of absolute despair that I had once again done something I said I wouldn't do. You know, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna go out until 9 o'clock. I'll stay out until 11. That'll give me enough time to get home, you know, to eat some bread and, you know, pass out, and then, you know, I'll be able to go to work in the morning. And then it was like, no, well, if I use a little bit of drugs, I can go to bed at 1, and I'll take a Benadryl, because that's natural. So I'll take a Benadryl to go to sleep, and then I'll still be able to get up for work on time. And then, you know, and then before I know it, the birds had happened. And so that 9 a.m. that morning, at 9 a.m., I realized I had stayed up again, and I text a friend of mine. A friend of mine had been sober for 2.5 years at this point. This is a man that I had known. He's part of the punk rock scene here. I had known him for a long time, and he's a man that I saw overdose several times with a needle in his arm in the corner of a bar. And this guy had been sober for 2.5. That was like fucking that was like so long, you know. And like, for him to be sober, I thought, you know, he was like the guru. So I texted him that morning, and I told him what I had done and that I needed help, and that I couldn't fucking do this anymore by myself. And he said, cool, there's a meeting in a half hour. And I was like, oh, hell no. You know, this is Thursday at 9 in the morning. I've been up since yesterday, you know. And you know how you're really pretty about that point? You've got that extra layer of oil that somehow sticks, and you're that really pretty color of gray, you know. So it was like, and your nose is just like got those really nice circles on them, and your teeth are probably raw from all of the rubbing, and, you know, and I probably had crazy sex hair, and I was gorgeous. So there was no way I was going to a meeting. And so I said, I'm gonna put myself to sleep, and I'll go to a meeting tomorrow. And now I know what he probably thought, because I get these kind of phone calls now. And the next day I called him and I said, I'm ready. So he had me meet him at the 974 group on Friday night. And I share this part of the story because it's important. I was able to walk into any bar anywhere. I could walk into any bar, any club, and anything by myself. I was fucking Whiskey Meg. You know, you don't scare me. Nothing, you know, you can't put anything past me. I could not get out of my car. I parked in my little red Audi that I had that was like fucking falling to pieces by this point. And I was parked right there on the curb right in front of the Haven, and I couldn't go in. And I kept calling him, and I kept saying, come out and get me. And he's like, I'm right here at the door. As soon as you come in, I got a seat for you. And I was like, motherfucker, just come out and get me. And he wouldn't, and I was bawling. And there was a moment where I was like, fuck this shit, I'm out. And then I thought, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, my daughter didn't, I couldn't do it for Lily. I couldn't do it for, my parents. I couldn't do it for anyone. I was like, I'm just done. And I got out of the car and I walked into the meeting and I sat down and you all said your weird sayings. I was totally like, this is like church, we were Easter Catholics, because Mom felt guilty on Christmas and Easter. So, I knew, the chants from church, and I totally thought it was like church. But the one thing that I noticed, and there's a couple people in this room that were there that night, and the one thing that I noticed is that they were happy. These people were happy. They were smiling and like so happy to see each other. And like there was like this dude with like face tattoos that was total like jail ink, and like he was totally hanging out with this like hippie lady. And there were like these young kids, and then like someone's kid was like screaming around, and I was just like, this is insanity, this is hell, like this is gonna be my life. And people shook my hand and they told me to keep coming back. And so that day someone mentioned to me that I should do 90 meetings in 90 days. And I thought, if that's what these people have done, that's what I want. So I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and I found a sponsor really early on. I went to the young people's group on Tuesday night at 8:30. It's still there, right? It's still there. And I found a sponsor there. My first sponsor, she kicked my ass. She kicked my ass hard for those first couple of years, and it was no bullshit. She wouldn't put up with my drama. She wouldn't put up with my lies. She wouldn't put up with anything. And that's what I needed. Like, and you come to this place, and some people, I joke that some people need hair braiders and some people need ass kickers, and I needed an ass kicker, because if I would have had somebody to braid my hair and tell me it was going to be okay, I wouldn't have stayed. But this woman was like, no, you're gonna fucking do this. You're gonna make your bed every day. You're gonna call me every day. You're gonna call 2 other women in the program. That was like the grossest idea. I was like, I don't do women unless I'm drunk and a lot of coke. Then I do women. But like, I don't hang out with women. You know what I mean? And so that was something that they said, like, you will call other women in this program. They will save your ass. And I was like, no. You got to understand, I'm like a guy's girl. I hang out with the guys. And they're like, no, that's not how this works. So, I followed those suggestions. And one of the suggestions that I had early on was that I would do service. I do events for a living. I worked for a pretty well-known music magazine back when I first got sober, and I was doing events. And my sponsor said, well, since you're doing all those events in the bar, you need to counteract it, and you're going to do a bunch of events for these sober people. And I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. But we did it. And, we had events probably like once a month. It was once a month for that first year, for the first 18 months of my sobriety. We prepared what's called a wacky paw bid. It's similar to what Salty and Slicky and Icky and everything else is. And what it did is it taught me how to stay sober. It taught me how to make friends in the program, and it taught me how to take direction and to listen to other people. The traditions, they help guide us, you know what I mean? Because we're a rowdy bunch of people to begin with. But if you follow the traditions and the concepts when you do service in AA, you're able to kind of learn and grow through that process. I truly believe in service. There's 3 sides to AA, and service was the one that I probably leaned way too far over on. But I heard something really great at the women's conference a couple weeks ago. Someone said, you just got to find your niche in service. Maybe you don't want to put on events, but maybe you're really good at making coffee, or maybe you're really good at setting up the chairs, and it's really, or or the greeter, or chairing a meeting for a month, or, driving some newcomers to a meeting, or just showing up at the 10 o'clock meeting on Sunday. That's a scary meeting for me, because I'm just like, Jesus Christ, these people, it's a lot of newcomers. So, but going there, reaching out your hand, giving them your phone number, that's a way of being of service too. I would like to tell you that I've done everything perfect in sobriety, but I'm an asshole, and I can't, and I'd be lying if I said that. About 3 years sober, I decided to take what I called my AA vacation, and I thought that I didn't need meetings. I stepped away from the program. I married a man by this point who didn't have a problem with alcohol or drugs. He didn't drink, so it was almost okay to be in a situation, where I was like, oh, it's fine, I have this family and everything's good. But what happened is I went 9 months without going to a meeting. And then what happened is I was pregnant at this time with my second daughter, and I started craving wine. And it was hilarious because I was like, this is normal, right? Like, people crave like pickles and ice cream and shit like that. And I was telling my sponsor, I was like, it's totally normal to crave wine, right? And she's like, no. So I went to a meeting, and and I got really uncomfortable because it was like I was a newcomer again. I couldn't sit still. I didn't want to hear what anyone had to say. And I left. And I had my daughter, and then about 6 months later, it was New Year's Eve. And I remember thinking, like, everyone else was really happy, and, everyone was doing all this New Year's stuff. And I sat there, and I was sitting by myself in the corner, and I thought, I really want to fucking die. There is, and for me, that's surprising, because I'm more homicidal than I am suicidal. I would rather kill you than kill me, right? So for me to come to that conclusion that it was hopeless, and I was a person that had a good life. Like, I had gotten, everything that I wanted, everything that I had hoped, I received. I was married, I had a great job. I just had welcomed my second little girl, and my older daughter was doing great, and yet I felt completely fucking empty. And it was because in my head, there was something in my head that was telling me, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, no one fucking likes you, you're a piece of shit, like every day. And that day I just couldn't handle it. And I thought about taking a bunch of pills, and there was something in me that said, call your sponsor. I hadn't talked to her in months, and she scared the shit out of me. And I was like, I'm gonna call her. So I called her, and she said, you have 3 options, Meg. You can take your life, you can take a drink, which will essentially take your life, or you can take a step. And what she meant is when she said take a step, it meant 2 things. Take a step back into the program, and also to start working on the steps. Take step 1 again, take step 2 again, take step 3 again. And that was the answer for me. I came back into the program full throttle. It was all again, service as much as possible. I stayed really close. I began working the steps again. I began sponsoring women again, and it saved my life. And all of a sudden, those voices go away. You know what I mean? Things start to seem better. The side, so let me rethink how I want to say this. The part of me that wants to say that everything is perfect in alcohol is because, or in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that I want you to stay here. I don't want anyone else to ever take a break, because a lot of people don't come back. I've lost all these birds that are tattooed on my arm are people that I've lost in the last couple of years, and that's a lot. It's people who have died of drug and alcohol related deaths. And, some of us don't get the second chance to come back. So I've been back in the program. I go to 2 to 3 meetings a week. I work with other women in the program. I have a new sponsor because I needed a change up in my program because things got stale. I couldn't go to fucking young people meetings anymore because I thought I would kill myself or kill you guys, because I was like, if I see one more fucking guy try to hook up with a girl, like, I'm gonna freak out, you know, and like, and so, and that was just me judging, and what needed to happen is I needed to go to some different meetings. So I switched up my meetings, and, you know, things got better. I ended up getting I'm just now divorced, and yeah, it's good, you know, but I was able to walk through that, you know, with grace. My ex-husband and I are best friends, you know what I mean? Like, we co-parent. He co-parents my older daughter too, you know, and so it's like that I can say is from Alcoholics Anonymous. That is from doing a proper inventory. That is from, you know, working on principles before personalities. That is, you know, cleaning up my side of the street. That is a gift that I was given through that. Since this is a Valentine's Day event, you know, I thought I would share with you guys, if you're new in the program and you're starting to date, hang on, because it gets better. I will tell you that. Like, and you know, they say don't have a relationship in the first year of sobriety, and it's not just to torture you and to make you, you know, fucking see things and, like, you know, make you sweat it out kind of thing. It's, you know, no one explained that to me. I always just, you know, all I heard was don't have a relationship within the first year. So of course, you know, I was like finding dudes in the program to sleep with within the first 90 days, but, you know, that'll get you. The reason why they tell you, and no one had explained this to me, the reason why they tell you not to date, not to get in a relationship for the first year is, one, in part because you need to work on yourself, but two, it's potential for you or that other person to drink. Something that, because, you know, you're not 100% well, and you know, you're not in a position where, you know, you're thinking clearly, and there's a possibility that whatever happens with you and that other person could cause you or that person to drink. And that's why they tell you that. It's not, you know, just, it's not to make you miserable, although that's what I thought. It's because no one explained it to me that something potentially could go wrong in this relationship. You could do something to that person, they could do something to you that could cause you later on to want to drink. And so, you know, take the time to work on yourself, and, you know, and trust me, you don't want to sleep with people within the first year in the rooms, because there's a good possibility they'll stay around as long as you are, and you have to see those people a lot. And it's not always fun. And it's really fun when people start talking about sex inventory in the meeting that you're in with the guys that you slept with when you first got sober. So if I could give you any experience, that would be, don't do what I did. You know, but the one thing that now that I'm newly single and dating and, you know, sober, is that the great part about it is that it's honest. You know, you can be honest. It's very challenging, and I'll tell you, I don't know how many people in here are newcomers. It's okay. The first time you have sex sober is awkward. It is. It's gonna be awkward. It goes away. Well, for some people it goes away. For some people it's like, keep the lights off. But, you know, it's, the good thing about, it's like today, you know, and your picker gets better. My sponsor used to say, you know, your picker was broken, because I would find any metalhead with a beard that smelled like cigarettes and cheap booze and like sweat, because he had, you know, he's been playing music, so he's really sweaty, you know. But it was like I would find any of them, and they were just so dark. And if you had a tattoo of a goat head, I instantly took my pants off, you know. Like it was just like, you know, I couldn't. And then I was like, why don't any of them love me, you know? And so my sponsor said, you know, your picker's broken, and one thing that you get back when you go through the program and, you know, you do the steps and, you know, you work on you, is your picker gets better. I promise. Like the better you get, the better your picker gets, you know? And sometimes it's good to look back on those people and be like, I could be there again. And, you know, so stay in the program and, you know, stay close to the program, work with other people, especially young people. For me, it was really hard when I came in because I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I wasn't an everyday drinker. I was a binge drinker. So that meant that, you know, Friday night, that was a hard one for me. But what had happened is I would go to the 974 meeting, and then we would all go out afterwards, you know, for pie at Village Inn, you know. And it sounded so cheesy, but now I look back and I'm like, that stuff saved my ass, you know, because I wouldn't be home thinking, okay, I could be to the bar right now, you know, or the call, when friends would call and say, you know, the show starts at 10, you know, I was already out with people. And so it's important that, you know, you go to the meetings after the meetings. It's important that you get into service and that you make friends with other people. And to the ladies in this group, if you think that you're one of the guys, you're fucking kidding yourself, okay? And I'm being totally serious right now because they don't give a shit about you. When it comes down to it, the women in this program will save your ass. They will save your ass because they will call you on your bullshit, and they will make sure that you stay happy, joyous, and free. And, you know, we all joke about 13 stepping and all that kind of stuff. I was not one of the girly girl when I came in here. I found peace in my female relationships that I have, and I developed those female relationships in these rooms. I was never able to hold on to relationships with women or be in depth relationships with women because, you know, basically you knew what I was doing because you were doing it too, you know, and I say that very, very seriously, and I say that, you know, with so much passion because that's what happened. The old ladies, God, the old ladies. I was like, I remember walking into if any of you have been to the Speakeasy Women's Group on Thursdays at noon, my sponsor was like, this is the women's group you need to go to. And I walked in and it was like every librarian and grandma was hanging out, you know, and I thought, I have nothing in common with these women. And when they started sharing their stories, I heard woman talk about, you know, she was an older lady, she was in her 50s, and not that that's old, but she talked about how she had done the walk of shame as she was walking home with her shoes in her hand, her panties in her purse, you know what I mean? And just and eyes down. You don't want anybody to look at you because your mascara is probably smeared down here and you've got that one knot in your hair. And, you know, she talked, you know what I'm talking about. You know, and she talked about doing that walk of shame and how she had done those drugs again and how the alcohol wasn't working anymore. And I was like, you know, she told my story. So listen for those things. If I sat in this room and tried to pick out, you know, what I don't have in common with all you guys, it makes me separate from you all. But one thing that I know is if you're here because you have a problem with alcohol, you're like me. You know, I can't just drink one beer. I made that very clear. You know, and I'm a little over 7 years sober now, and they say that these are scary times because this is the time, and you don't hear a lot of people pick up chips from 5 to 10. And that's scary to me. If in your next meeting, look and see, there's not a lot of people that pick up chips from 5 to 10 because that's after you kind of like held onto your ass for the first 5 years and you've done the work, and now it's like you're doing shit in sobriety. You know, stuff on your 4th step is from not when you're drunk, but when you're sober. And you know, and there are times when I think like I could have a glass of wine. You know what I mean? I could totally have a glass of wine with dinner. I'm a lady now. I was never a fucking lady, and I sure as fuck am not one now. You know what I mean? I have to play the tape forward and know that glass of wine turns into the fucking magnum of wine, which turns into shots of whiskey, which turns into trying to score the drugs, which turns into whatever 30-pack I need to buy at the gas station at 7 a.m. when it's open because I can't get anything hard, you know, and then I'm looking for whatever to take me down. I have to play that tape forward because that's what keeps me sober today is I'm not that far from the bottom anymore. You know what I mean? And it's AA that has kept me sober, and it's AA that will continue to keep me sober. So that's all I have.
Thanks.